How's the visibility?
It's about 1,000,000 times more comfortable than the old one, too, because it doesn't sit on the bridge of my nose. It actually goes over my chin.
That makes sense. Does yours have a strap over the top of your head, or is it just the side straps like my...
Let me just put my phone back here, and hopefully you'll be able to just see, because I'm not really quite sure what you mean by that.
Gotcha. It just has side straps.
I guess so.
Yeah. It doesn't have a strap over the top of your head.
I mean, it does go over the bun rather than under the bun.
Gotcha. Yeah. You've got longer hair than I have right now, too. So
I have no idea what you're talking about.
My hair is actually a little bit longer now than it had been. I'm starting to grow out a bit of a bun, but mine is more like a top bun when I can gather it.
Guys, we'll start the meeting here in a few minutes, so just letting everybody know. Feel free to keep talking and chatting until then.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Oh, geez, a bunch of them showed up. I was looking for my mask.
I have a new toy that I wanted to show everybody. Have you seen these?
Haven't.
I have a new face that I'm already showing off. So I would love to
It's
attempt to
light.
see this new toy, but I can't promise.
So it is a, like,
It's a book light.
it's a book light. So, yep.
That's really cool.
And it's like battery operated.
Yep.
So you just have to recharge it.
Can you hold it up again?
Okay.
I don't know if it was your end or mine, but your video feed freezed up for a long time.
There you go. So yeah,
Yeah, there
you
we
close
go.
it and then you open it up.
Wow.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It might find some game use here.
It's amazingly bright.
It is.
It's also really interesting. It's magnetic. So you can actually, like, I stuck it to my fridge and you can, like, you can attach it to something metal. And it's, you know, I was like, that's the perfect light to have for a LARP because it's really bright, but it's like you can make it directional by closing it. So pretty cool.
Huh.
Lots of fun.
That's awesome.
How's everybody doing?
I
Pretty
can't really
good.
tell, but I suspect with this mask on that the feed on my face probably looks like that one every 40-year-old dad portrait, you know, where they're kind of looking at it at an odd angle.
I'm excited that my kids will be here for the event.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And Cordy will be
Yes.
playing, so that's awesome.
Oh, wow.
Aww.
Yep.
I can't believe it's been, what, 2-3 years since I've seen her?
I think it's been 2. It's
Okay, I
at
can't
least-
remember if it was 20, I think it was 2018.
Yeah.
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 She was at Girl Scout camp whenever I worked there. So Matt and I have had
Yeah.
several connections.
Caleb?
Welcome, everybody.
It's in April. I want to book the April.
The other GMs, do you guys
Hi,
want
April.
to get started, or do we want to give a few more minutes, let other people join in, since it's just now 2?
Some things bring them closer.
I might like a few minutes to see if I need to be holding the baby. But I don't guess I need to outright leave the meeting to do that.
How many people are
God,
here?
he's selfish.
Oh, hi.
We're currently sitting at 11. 11 people joined, and there's a few other people in some of these. So we've got Kay and Chrissy and Angela. They're both sharing their own.
I'd say give it another 5 or 10 minutes. Make sure everybody trickles in.
All right. So guys, keep continuing. Feel free to chat with one another, get to know each other. Let's start at 2:10. We'll start the meeting.
Matt, I thought you were going to be on the road right now.
It changed till tomorrow.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Alternatively, how do you know he's not on the road?
Well, I mean,
Because I'm in the cabin.
workly speaking, I think most of us are on the road.
No. It's just the back of a trailer that looks like a cabin, right?
Yeah, with the comfy chair.
You're actually going about 70 down the highway right now, I bet.
Yeah, that's
Bump,
it.
bump, bump, bump. Yeah, there we go.
So it looks like we do have a few new players in here as well. Erica, Caleb, and Becca. Welcome, guys.
Hi,
Welcome. Hello. Let me look around here.
Hi. I see Erica and Caleb. And of course Becca. But Becca, I think of you as, well, an old player. And in those terms, I'm a new player too.
Well, thanks.
No, I mean, not,
Like, just thanks. I just turned 30 and have a complex, but thanks, Ben.
what was it?
No.
Jeff,
New versus old
what was-
player is not the
what was I
same as
saying
new versus
earlier?
old person.
Jeffrey, what was I saying earlier about putting my foot in my mouth?
Hello.
You have a healthy diet of toes?
Do you know what else I have besides a new face?
No.
A loaded
Yeah.
question?
I have a healthy diet of baby.
So Caleb, I knew some of the things of you starting on your character. Any further progress?
Yeah, I've come up with a backstory, and my brother is helping me create some armor and stuff at his little forge, little blacksmith.
I need to be working on some armor for a new character I'm hoping to introduce probably at the camping event.
What type of armor are you making it out of? What are you making? What material are you making your armor out of?
Well, he is actually making them out of. I have some copper arm bands, yeah, little arm, and then he's making some of like pop top chainmail.
What? Why the copper? Why the sad lumpy metal?
Because he had copper wiring. And he found it.
Yourself some tin and make
Copper's
bronze.
beautiful.
Let me see. Yeah, they're just like these little woven ones. They're cute.
Copper can be fun.
They're cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I'm mocking you, but yeah, copper should be good.
Make sure you coat it with something because it will corrode real quick.
Yeah.
Green arms.
Unless that's what you're wanting.
Right? It would fit my theme.
I would be cautious of it corroding too much. I don't know how safe corroded copper is offhand, but it sounds like probably not a great idea.
No.
No, the real problem with corroded copper is the skin staining.
Unless you actually ingest it, and then we have copper poisoning.
Yeah, don't do that.
April, stop eating copper.
Yeah,
I like the taste of
corroded
pennies
copper,
in my
there's not
mouth.
really anything we could do about that. That's your own damn fault.
All right, April, this means that you can still eat pennies as long as you eat post-1982 pennies, because they're predominantly zinc.
You
The
must
more
check
you
the
know.
all pennies.
Just be aware. Zinc poisoning isn't a thing.
But it's not copper poisoning.
On the topic of armor, does anyone in here have a solid idea of how to go about adjusting chainmail? because one of my armoring projects is I have a chainmail shirt that I need to tighten up a little bit.
Butted or riveted?
It's just butted chainmail. It's real simple.
You take sections out in triangles. Basically, you're going to dart it like you would put in darts in put in or remove darts out of a piece of fabric.
Huh.
Still
Okay.
trying to find where this meeting's going?
No, it's just a Zoom meeting.
There's another one.
Person today.
Okay.
Glad you figured
Oh, nice. I was wondering
Yeah,
about that.
Yeah, like I was gonna finish on
Big
the
old
connectors. And, bam!
So metal on the inside too. Awesome.
The pauldrons look almost as big as I would like a shield to be.
kind of
Yeah, medieval pattern and maybe some armor.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that just be a wonderfully macho thing to be able to say is my pauldron is bigger than your shield? I can't help it though. I like small shield. The big ones always feel like they just get in my way.
Not to be the anime person, but isn't that Chad's entire character in Bleach?
Oh,
Have no idea because I do not watch Bleach.
His entire thing is that he has like the shoulder thing that's just massive. Angela, we can't hear you.
I had no idea, so yeah, I'd definitely say we can't hear her.
Yeah, it looks like her audio is off. I could be wrong.
I know I'm muted.
no,
Oh, okay.
Spacebar, like
There's
you?
Angela.
Beth?
There you go.
I was hitting the spacebar, guys. I was hitting the spacebar to unmute
no.
me. It wasn't doing
Hello,
it.
Angela.
So let me fix it.
Gotcha.
And there's someone behind you. I can't quite tell.
That's a Chrissy.
Oh, hello, Chrissy.
hello, person.
I promise I'm not dumb. It's just hard to see the screen through the mask.
I don't really have any gift right now, Joe.
Volume up.
For some reason, it wasn't unmuting when I hit the spacebar. So
Fair enough.
off and on again, and it's working.
All right, guys. It is 2:10. We've given people a chance to jump in, and we may have more people that jump in as we are here. But as I said on the social page, guys, we are going to record this meeting. So it's being recorded right now. For anyone who is not able to attend, they can jump in and watch it after we post it. So, all right, we should get started. We've got a couple of important things to talk about. The big one that we want to make sure that we talk about today is the July event.
Please, let's do that.
So, as of right now, we do have a place reserved up at Look at the Ozarks. It is a secluded camp, so it would just be us that are there. We've talked about it a couple of times at a couple of these meetings so that you guys knew some details about it. But we want to talk about it in regards to the current situation with COVID and where everything is at. Does anybody, Rick, Kay, do you guys want to jump in and
I mean, basically, the big thing is deciding kind of what you as the players are comfortable with, kind of what some things to think about. Is there anything that you guys want us to be aware of as GMs that we need to be considering once we, as we're making a decision, whether it's this event or even just any future in-person events in general. And Ben, I know that you've got kind of a unique perspective on everything as far as what's been going on. I mean, have you heard is there anything you can report that's changed recently, or is it still kind of day by day?
A lot of things are day by day. And I've been on vacation for like a week and a half, so I've only been at the hospital the last 2 days. We'll still get changes coming across every day that affect how we handle things in the hospital. So some of the stuff that I might talk about may be what I've read about for the city of Springfield. Because if you're asking my opinion, I'm also going to give you my opinion on what my Sifu has done for the Kung Fu school and whether or not I feel that that's adhering to the city's guidelines. My biggest reservation looking at the camping event is whether or not we're renting a facility that some of us might be staying the night in, or whether we're all camping individually on the grounds in separate arrangements.
Oh, dear.
Because if we are camping as a group in a common building, it is probably going to exceed the guidelines for the number of occupants in a common area.
Okay.
So the guidelines that we've gotten, at first we were given the rules that like it was canceled. Mm-hmm. And then there were some other guidelines that if we can maintain certain practices, then we can be at the event. But some of the things that would change, so there would be additional sanitizing and cleaning upkeep. They would require social distancing. They would take out all of the cooking equipment in the main cooking area, so we would have to bring our own. And then they said that sleeping arrangements and seating should be handled in family groups. So who you are normally with. That's what Camp Redbud has put on us. Those are the requirements that they have given us. Again, we are the location, we're kind of looking at so we're going to be moving from lots of different places. So Springfield's going to have one set of guidelines, Lake of the Ozarks is going to have another set, wherever people are from, they're going to be coming from different locations that have different, outbreak, situations. Yeah. We just want to make sure that you guys, we're doing this for my job too. What would make you feel comfortable to be able to go? We have some things we can do. A day event would definitely be easier than overnight and, food. But, we also have things like we exchange materials and coins and items. And so that's a concern. We also have thought, we usually have a tavern. So what does that look like? And what does cooking look like for everybody? Even NPC duty. So if you're playing an NPC and we designate a specific bad guy by wearing a specific mask, and then someone else wears that mask, what are the implications of us having anything that's going to touch our body, even like clothing? I was saying, if I put on a tunic and I'm talking and, interacting with people, there's potential for that, spittle to be on those costume pieces. And if we're exchanging those, there's potential transfer. So the sleeping space there are 8 cabins, right?
There are 8 cabins, yep. Each cabin has 4 to 6 beds. 6 of them have 4 beds, 2 of them have 6 beds. So there'd be some ability for some family groups, people that are already in close contact with each other, to be able to stay together.
Okay, but feasibly, how many actual close family groups do we have?
That's
like that. We're gonna run out of space to put people because I'm not in close contact with 99% of you guys. Angela's the only one. And
right. That's not very often.
Yeah, and there's no reason for us to be in one cabin when there's 6 beds in there. We're gonna run out of space to put people. Granted, I'm probably not gonna go because I work in the healthcare field. I'm already a high risk, and a lot of my consumers are. I can't take the risk that some of you guys haven't taken proper necessity. I can't take that risk. I'm
in the same boat.
I honestly think that, we're going to have too many people. We'll be exchanging too many things. Like Kay said, the NPC equipment, the materials, the coins. I'm of the opinion that LARP is not conducive to social distancing by any means.
Yeah, and how do you socially distance while fighting?
Yeah.
How do you fight while
you're I understand that a lot of people are itching to play, but I don't know necessarily that it's a good idea to start back up yet. Numbers are still on the rise.
I'm kind of in agreement, and I hate to say it. So one of the reasons why I was saying that I can kind of put my foot in my mouth for things like this, I'm itching to play. But it might be too soon. And especially it might be too soon for an overnight event. That to me just suggests we're going to be in too much close contact with too much going on. There's some ability to maintain distancing with a day event. But even with that, if we were trying to do it this soon, I would say that for the group, it would only be really wise if we were wearing masks for certain things like combat or like close contact, just to prevent transmission. I wish I could say something else.
Stay in your seat.
I mean, I hate it because I want to play. I want to go out and do this. But I'm having to do that with work, I'm having to figure out how to do virtual training for Girl Scout leaders right now because that's all that we can do. We can't meet together, and we don't know what it's going to look like. And the area that we're going to made national news just a few weeks ago for not necessarily following those procedures, and we don't know what that's going to look like 2 weeks from today. What that outbreak could look like. And I think that's the frustrating thing is that we all want to play, but we're just still in this place of I don't know. Yeah. And so then what do we do? And what would make you feel comfortable going? What would be some things that would make you feel comfortable? And from my office, they ask things like the availability of antibody testing. I know some LARPs are saying until there's a vaccine, we're not going to meet in person. There are some other organizations who have done that, or requiring wearing masks, which is also not very conducive to, some people wear masks all the time, but fighting is more difficult. And it's also July. So I don't know if anybody's noticed, but wearing your mask now is a whole lot harder than it was in March and April.
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah, all day long in the hospital. Oh, God. It had me nearly ready to pass out yesterday because I was helping somebody bathe. I'm not kidding. It was, I was nearly off my feet. I don't have a good answer. And I can say this, having, I've been out I've been out to Kung Fu school 2 nights this last week out live. But the first night that I went out, 8 people showed up, and that's in a 30 by 30 space. So I told my instructor I'm going outside. I'm practicing out there rather than being inside with all the rest of them.
I feel like a camping event is almost out of the question at this point. I feel like there's just too much going on there and a little too much risk. A day event might be doable, but even that feels kind of questionable.
I completely agree. My thought is that if we go into this thinking, well, we'll be as cautious as we can and we'll observe all these rules and guidelines, we're still well, for those of us that have run a D&D group, for instance, how many times have you set up a D&D adventure and said, like, I want you guys to go through this, and then had somebody say, I'm going to see what's behind that wall?
Yep, happens all the time.
And the same kind of thing can happen in this.
It does.
That said, I do feel like
100%.
our group is very good, has been very good about developing a safety conscious culture. I feel like if we lay down rules like that for safety purposes, people can reasonably be expected to follow them.
Yeah.
And we might have to poke people and say, hey, don't do that periodically, but I don't think it's going to be that huge of a deal if we make it clear enough.
My biggest
That
concern, I
said-
think, is this. Somebody checks in, we do everything that we need to do. We do temperature checks, we, hand everything out with gloves, we do everything we do, but somebody still gets sick on Saturday afternoon. We've all been, but somebody is not sick, but then they develop the symptoms, we don't know what can happen when you're asymptomatic. Honestly, we just still don't know how this thing works.
Yeah.
But if somebody does get sick when we're there, what do we do about that? That's a potential.
It is.
So
as an ancillary concern, this is not the sort of thing we want to end up on the news for.
Thank you.
As a newbie myself, I don't see having the courage to come to an event in person until probably the fall.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So let's change the discussion a little bit, guys. We all are concerned. Let's change the discussion to, and Kay had brought this up earlier, what would make you feel more comfortable in joining an event, either a day event or a camping event? What needs to happen before you are ready?
If I may, yeah, and it's probably going to sound a little bit radical, could we design a temporary alternate sort of game that is designed to be more conducive to social distancing protocols?
I don't, that is radical. Just from my own perspective, I don't think I have the bandwidth to be able to create something new. Now, modifying what we're doing for something really temporary, maybe, or maybe it's just something where as individuals we do something in the meantime. But the question at hand is what would make you feel more comfortable coming to either a day event or a weekend event? What would
something
you
in person?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could change anything about the current situation, what is the threshold at which you could go, yeah, I'm cool going out and hanging out with people during the weekend?
Just don't let nobody sit in my mouth. I'll be good.
What's that?
The way we, with the way we currently do things, I think the big thing would be have to treat the wearing of a mask or not wearing of the mask similar to a yellow band. If you're not wearing a mask, you are not allowed to engage in combat directly. I think because that is the point where people are closest and also paying the least amount of attention to contact.
Okay.
And so that's the point where exchange, as it were, is probably going to be most likely.
Seth, I'm going to roll that into just general safety practices.
So I think it didn't unmute, but Chrissy just said that masks should not be optional. If you are at this event, I tend to agree with this. If you are at the event, you are wearing a mask.
Yeah. Anything like the 6-foot rule is established for mask wear, not extra to mask wear or whatever. So if you're not wearing a mask, you need to be, well, much further away from people. Granted, there are many people out in the public that aren't adhering to that in any way, shape, or form.
Likely.
Sometimes myself included, just to out myself a little bit. But if we're really thinking about safety with all of this, then masks should not be optional until such point as we no longer need to wear them. And I don't anticipate the hospital doing that anytime soon.
So
Yeah, that's a much simpler way of putting it than I
So
had.
basically,
Masks are more or less mandatory.
Yeah.
And we might even consider making a bunch to hand out to people who, for whatever reason, do not have one by now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to roll that into general safety practices that we would implement. What other things, because I think, Caleb, I think you had something that you were wanting to say. Sorry, it looked like you did.
Well, I mean, we don't let it, and no one gets into our building unless we take their temperature first. And yeah, I mean, everyone's wearing masks when they're close together. So that's how I've been doing it.
The one thing we changed at the hospital now is we're now allowing 1 visitor per patient, but that took effect yesterday.
Yeah, I was there all yesterday for my mom's gallbladder surgery.
Cool.
Well, and for us, we're just going to be real honest. We already told the people that we have been in contact with, but we were actually at the McDonald's during the time, that there was a new, statement that said this person was working while having the symptoms.
they wore masks. They had the mask and the gloves, and the risk was low according to health department, but still.
But we didn't find, we have to think about what, we've done, watch our symptoms, but it's like over a week after that happened. So
I spent the first 3 days this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, thinking my husband might have COVID. So it's like it's just bronchitis. He doesn't have it, but
Gotcha.
I slept in my mask 2 nights this week because it's still a problem. It's not. It hasn't gone away. It's not getting better yet. So.
All right. So back on the subject at hand, what's the threshold? What milestone do we have to hit as a locality or a society or a nation or whatever that would make people feel comfortable coming to a indoor event? And what are those, what safety guidelines would we have to observe at that event for people to feel, on the whole, comfortable to go out?
What would you need?
for me, it would be that everybody cooks their own food or brings their own, there's not sharing food.
No sharing food, no storage.
That's not a guideline, but if there were other things in place, sharing food, or cooking spaces, that would be something that's a big deal to me, just from food service. So.
Understandable.
Because, yeah, multiple people who aren't already in the same family group trying to share utensils or space or food or whatever probably kind of just undoes a lot of it, doesn't it?
If we're looking at what do we want to see happening locally that makes us feel more comfortable with large group contact, then I would say I would like to see the point at which we're no longer having to wear daily masks in the hospital. But that's going to be a sea change in the process of this disease. Either we get to a point where they no longer feel like it's as much of a contact issue, or we have some sort of antivirus or what have you. I don't know when that's going to happen. So I don't know that that's really an answer to what you're trying to ask.
So that actually is more of an answer than but
yeah.
So your threshold is when hospitals stop requiring daily mask usage constantly, then you are comfortable to come out to a large group event.
Then I'm comfortable to come out to a large group event without masks or other precautions like the hospital would take.
Okay. Is there any step before that that you can think of that is like, with masks or with special rules or stuff like that, I'd be still comfortable going? Like, say, an infection rate below 1/10, or like, what's the?
Not necessarily, because thinking on something that I heard on NPR the other day, they were talking about, like, let's say we have 10% rate of infection. That's 10 people out of 100. Well, I come in contact with more than 100 people in a population which has also distributed amongst others. So I could be your 1/10 at any given point. And so
sorry, not 1/10, 1/10 of a percent. So the infection rate is like 1.31% or something like that, isn't it? Or no, it's dropped down to like what, 1.25. So like if it was like 1/10 of the current infection rate, would that be the threshold, or?
Not really, because I'm still going by what the hospital tells me. So if the hospital is telling me to wear a mask because they don't want me to cross-contaminate, then I'm still looking at it as I'm potentially a contamination issue for anyone that I come into contact with.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm more of a risk of transmitting that to any of you than others of you who don't work in healthcare are, because I'm coming in contact with so many people. I'm in contact with so many people in a vulnerable community. One way or another, I could potentially be putting all of you at risk and all of my patients.
So
and I don't want to do that.
And nobody wants to spread this at all. How about this? Let's go to an extreme example. There are other LARPs that are saying they are not going to continue until there's a vaccine. How many of you feel that you do not want to participate in a day event or a camping event until there's a vaccine? Just raise your hand if that's you. And that's okay if that's you. That's perfect.
My camera isn't on, but that sounds definitely acceptable to me, because the other part of the threshold for me is at what point am I comfortable bringing Rowan, the infant baby who cannot be reasonably expected to wear a mask or whatever, along. And I think there's a vaccine is definitely the point where that would be the threshold for where I'm comfortable bringing Rowan along to an event.
I understand that.
I'll say sorry.
No, go ahead.
Like if it's just Becca and I going, I feel like we can keep ourselves safe enough that we don't end up bringing it home. But there's also the fact of at what point do we feel safe bringing Rowan with us instead of finding somebody to watch her while we go off?
Marissa?
If that makes sense.
I was going to say I'm probably more comfortable with outdoor events, just the whole concept of open air and ability to have more space between us if needed. Like, tents can be separated pretty far out if we're camping, whatever. But I will say that I'm probably not going to be comfortable doing an indoor event until there's a vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Understand you there. I would probably be comfortable with outdoor events and mask wear, but not with indoor events.
So let's pose the question here then. One of the big things about our LARP is the economy. We have coin, we have materials, we have things that pass between people and trade and stuff like that. At what point, what would you need in order to feel comfortable doing that? To being able to handle things again that other people are handling?
I mean, with groceries, we've just been disinfecting our groceries and not buying a ton of like produce. So that would be my only thought on passing things around.
Right. So I don't recognize your face. So I'm going to guess you're a newer person.
Yeah, totally new.
Our materials and coins are about this big. Hold up to my face. They're real little. They're smashed coins. They are 3D printed, like 15 millimeter little things. Disinfecting all those in between every person is not viable.
I hear you.
My opinion. So it's.
And then of some people have allergies to certain cleaning products versus others. Like I know I personally have to be real careful because the wrong kind of scent will shut my lungs the fuck down. Sorry, language. So like that's another thing. And I know that like one of the things we have to watch out at our work is there are very specific like cleaning products we use just because there are people who do have allergies. And I'd be worried about like, I'm allergic to this thing. It came into contact. So-and-so didn't know that, which is, you can't be expected to know that. Now I've got hives and I'm uncomfortable on top of things being super small.
Yeah, that would be a thing. I know like bleach and certain like traditional sanitizing, materials can sometimes cause really bad reactions. So
I don't really know what would make me comfortable with passing objects around. Like, just as another example, I've been wanting to go and play Magic cards with friends, but that's not a reasonable expectation right now. And like, as a temporary solution, I could think of a couple that involves circumventing that, but as far as being able to actually do it like we've been able to, I'd just have to do more research before I would even have an opinion on that. I just don't know enough.
Yeah. The only workaround I could see that might actually be feasible if you guys did an outdoor event is, those really stupid, really small, cheap-ass little notebooks of just keeping tabs of what you've spent, how much you started with, rather than actually handling all of the materials. That does go on a lot of a big honor system. But, I mean, if I can't trust, like, if you're going to cheat at this kind of stupid game, by all means, I guess do it. You're only killing the fun for yourself.
Yeah.
That might be the best workaround rather than trying to sanitize everything. Probably, I would
tedious and a little bit immersion breaking, but that safety has to come first on that one.
Yeah, immersion or staying safe. Look, I have asthma. My lungs are shot. I work with a guy whose lungs function at 27%. If one of you guys get people sick because you wanted to have immersion, I will personally come fight you.
Okay, Chrissy.
My impression is if we're wearing masks and we're handling things in between each other, as long as we disinfect before we remove the mask or contact our face, we're not going to pass a substance that is mostly, I don't want to say orally transmitted, air transmitted along to each other. Now, if we take off the mask without handling it properly, we will, regardless of what we're handling. So it may be possible to hand things to each other and carry our own disinfectant so that we can disinfect ourselves after removing the mask or before contacting our face. I don't know who all is comfortable with that.
Like, even
assuming
people know that, oh, I need to do it this way, I need to do it that way. Muscle memory is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, take it off and you just don't do it. Just because you forget. People forget.
No.
It's
based off, I'd say based off the ideas it sounds here, like for me personally, wearing the masks would be a requirement. And then the notebook idea is a great idea, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's a little bit, again, a little extra work as far as writing stuff down, who gets what. And then on the back end, we would just have to ask you guys as players to understand, we may not be able to calculate your ending coin and your ending materials right away. It might be something we have to go back based off notes and kind of organize that at a later time. But that seems to be the safer than exchanging materials and stuff, and risk someone just, like Angela said, muscle memory. I don't even think about it. I go to scratch my face and
Yeah.
I mean, I do that with a mask on because I've worked in manufacturing so long. It's like the muscle memory is, oh yeah, I have a mask on. And it's fine if I touch my face because I've been doing it for years. Because you just get hot and sweaty and you go, oh God, and then it's like, oh no, wait, this is a different context. Whoops.
And then there's me with my plague mask, where if my face itches, I basically just grab the very tip of it and wiggle it back and forth a little bit and hope that's good enough. Which I have no idea if that's acceptable or not.
So sounds like we have a workaround for interpersonal, like exchanging of items and inventory, basically, your character inventory. The other thing to bring up then would be combat, because combat in our system can get very up close and personal.
Let's be real, so can social interactions.
It's true.
Honestly, in my opinion, the social interactions are more close and personal than the combat, because at least in the combat, you have you and the sword between you and the person.
Unless you go the Phoenix Bathfeather route of like, it's knife time, everybody gets knife hugs.
Most people aren't you, Ryan.
No knife hugs.
Knife hugs.
Knife hugs are not allowed.
Do we need to just put a temporary ban on using knives at that rate? Do we need to just put a temporary ban on using knives at that rate as well? Just to prevent people from getting that close in order to
figure out if we're
Based on what everybody's saying, it feels like a camping event probably is not, one, something that most people feel comfortable doing, and two, probably not appropriate right now.
This is true. I think we're trying to determine at what point it will be appropriate and a viable option to do so, and under what circumstances. Is it 2 months from now and we're all wearing masks and sanitizing everything and using books and everything like that? Is it a year from now when there's a vaccine? Is it in December and hoping that the vaccine recedes due to climate? Yeah.
I mean, part of me says, I can't, if Greene County's, I can't remember if Greene County completely opened up, but the city of Springfield itself, we're still in what phase? We just started what, phase 3 of 5 phases?
As of June 15th, apparently everything's open.
Well,
Missouri, though, the states or the cities and counties are allowed to make their own extra stuff. The state on the 16th, the state is no longer mandating anything.
Right.
So like the state is open, the Greene County is open, but the city of Springfield still has some regulations from what I gather.
Springfield's now will now be 50% occupancy for the building. They're still recommended. There was something else I can't remember offhand, but my opinion is, as far as the step for doing even day events, we would I would still say we would need to be through phase 5. We would need to be through all those phases.
I'm going to lay down a very hard personal truth. Local or larger governments are not a metric to base your ethics on at this point in time. They are not here to pick up any ethical slack for us. So we have to make our own ethical judgments as our own. There are not enough things that are, maybe if we were in a different locality, maybe if we were in a different situation, it might be a better barometric, but it is not necessarily the best barometric. Ours is the state that is one of the most lax on this type of situation and has a governor that almost denies that this is an issue.
I agree with that. So we need to listen to Ben over here and the hospitals, and like Matt hasn't been at work all week because of his bronchitis, but I get information from him all the time too. He works at Mercy. So I think that's going to be a better gauge, because the hospitals are going to be based off of, oh, hey, we have, this many people here with this. We're still seeing the numbers go up. We're still seeing that kind of stuff. So
it also depends on where people are traveling.
The government is as well. So they have less reason to try and lie or not care about it.
I also think that, like, thinking about where people are traveling from, that's another consideration, because I know for Girl Scouts they are going to start allowing troops to meet, but they're all in the same location. They've probably been kind of in each other's spaces already, you know, so it's a small group in one area. But we're not opening events because we don't want people traveling from one community to another. So we have to make sure that we're not just looking at Springfield, but looking at other places. And do we want to bring Springfield stuff to them or have them bring it to us?
And when we're looking at that and looking at Springfield versus other states and other parts of the country, we have to keep in mind that we are in Missouri and near to Kansas. So we are very central to the United States and kind of an insular community. I mean, Springfield is a lot smaller than Durham, North Carolina, where I've lived and still have friends, or other areas that are more coastal, and those areas are seeing a lot more cases and possibly a little bit further along in the progress of the disease than we are right here. Now, granted, the numbers are starting to slow down, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them tick upward a little bit as things start to move inward to the country. We're centralized and we're kind of insular, and that protects us in some ways. There's a part of me that wonders, would it be different if we went up to do an event around Lake of the Ozarks? Because that's a little bit closer to larger cities and a larger population. And then we have cross-contamination from all of that.
See, and that's definitely a concern and something that we're keeping in mind. One nice thing about being able to reserve spaces the way that we do is that we reserve them away from everything. So like parks that are reserved campgrounds type things. So most of the time they're secluded from others. So I don't feel that we need to necessarily worry as much about that, but it's still definitely a concern.
What about our crew that comes all the way from like Iberia? That's not super, like, maybe I'm wrong and that's fine, but I feel like that's not super
It's close to like the Ozarks.
Yeah, okay. Still though, how close is that to those of us like here in Springfield where we're more reserved? I don't travel that way very often, so I don't know.
Missouri is so weird. You said that you're the group that travels from Iberia, and I was like, Spain?
There's
I was thinking that too.
Kanan and his crew, they all come in from a place called Liberia, and it is near Lake of the Ozarks. So this event is actually going to be up closer to their stomping grounds.
The state is so weird.
It is. We can't say anything right either, so.
El Dorado.
Dorado, Nevada, Versailles.
I think Versailles is the worst one.
Versailles is awful.
Yeah, I have sand under my skin due to our sales. It's yeah.
To St. Louis, and you see all the really weird French stuff. Nobody can say anything up there either. Trust me, I grew up there. There's so many things they say wrong.
Oh, I have no room to talk, and I don't mean to digress, but I'm originally from Knoxville, Tennessee. I was working with a patient that said he was from somewhere right close. I said, really, where? He said, Marvel. I said, yeah, you are a native. Marvel is south of Sevierville, where Dolly Parton was born.
Yeah.
Anybody else would read it as Maryville.
Yeah, my dad lived in Nashville for a while, so I think he lived in Sevierville, but now they live in Louisville, and I know how to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Louisville.
that whole area, that whole Appalachian region, the accent is very similar.
Question for y'all.
Yeah.
So I know this year is completely different than ever before, but would you normally do like the camp out weekend in July? Do you normally do summer camp outs?
Maybe we would do May and then October.
Yeah, okay. Because I was just like, just the fact that it's in July was like, oh, child. What?
Also, we did it last year because we got like the place that we had the driveway washed out, so we couldn't have it in May. Nobody was able to get in.
Ooh.
So we did it in July, but it was hot.
I think that was the first time we, as this group, did it, but a lot of our players individually have done it before as well.
Ooh, child.
It kind of sucks, but sometimes it's worth it.
Yeah, typically we try and avoid the summer months. It's usually day events. And then we may even pick once a month where we might try and do an actual indoor event or something that kind of takes us out of the heat a little bit.
The original thought for one of the original thoughts for doing is being able to host this event in July was that there were several indoor locations and cabins set up, and it was going to potentially be a place where people could escape the heat. But now that escaping the heat causes a bit of an issue of us congregating, then yeah, it defeats the purpose of the site.
Gotcha.
I got together with Matt weekend before last to do some work on armor and so on, and both of us were saying, like, so when we do this, not wearing armor, no, not much of anything, really.
Ability armor is your friend.
My vampire laughs at you.
Well, both my characters have ability armor, and I'm glad of it, because I was like, I might go as Kieran, and I might just wear that wrap like a kilt, and not a whole lot else.
But yeah, it does get very, very warm. And, you know, luckily this place has running water, so we don't have to bring our own. But, you know, hydration and making sure there's a cool space. What?
That actually brings up another valid point on the topic of pandemic safety, though. Is if we're all drinking from the same water source, is it worth making sure that our respective drinking vessels are sanitized on a semi-regular basis during the event?
I mean, yes, to an extent, but the more important thing is you just don't share.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
As long as the water source can drip into your vessel or, you know, pour into your vessel, you're fine. So we use common water sources around the hospital all the time. We just don't pass somebody our drinking vessel.
Isn't it fun to learn all kinds of new things and new rules and like rethink how we do everything in our life?
Oh God, it's endless fun.
Makes me think of another possibly delicate question/suggestion. Is, do we want to suggest that there is something similar going on from an in-character perspective?
No, that's I don't feel that is an appropriate topic. I don't think we should make light or amusement of current events like that. I've had the thought, and I've had a thought of having not this thing be a thing, but an adjacent topic or a completely different topic. Say like, oh, it's under siege or in part of a extended raid or something like that. And even then, it's still like, it feels weird.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily need to equate, you know, real life current events into the game.
That's about what I figure, but I wanted to put it out there at least.
All right. I'm going to say something that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, but Angela, that was the most satisfied cat I've seen in a long time. Just so happy.
It is beautiful.
To address your question, Seth, if you're concerned with what is your character doing in this time, I think it's safe for all of us to kind of develop that ourselves with what would your character be doing right now. Like, they're not always going to be in a group of a bunch of other adventurers. What do they do in their downtime? What are they working on? That kind of character development is huge for a character.
I mean, it's a little sticky for me in particular because for Dr. Morio, that's a pretty easy answer. But the monk was originally planned to be retired by now, had COVID not happened and had we proceeded with our games as normal. But obviously that didn't happen. None of the development I had planned along those lines got a chance to actually happen in-game.
So your monk character left off with being taken into custody, is that right?
Yes, taken into custody by the Order. The short version of the plan was he was going to come back, with orders from the Order. He was going to discover that whatever the Order did to him is not in fact helping with his lycanthropy, and he was supposed to end up embracing that and basically running off into the woods to be a hermit.
You can still do that. You being locked up is taking longer than what you expected.
That's fair.
It's just rationalize it. It's all good.
Instead of over the winter, it took almost a year.
Do you still want Hanu to be part of that story?
I do, and I know I haven't been really good about contacting you or Amand, who also wanted to be part of that story, to actually write any of it, but yeah, that is still a thing I'm wanting to happen as well, if possible.
I would love that. I would love to be part of it.
Yeah. Those things can still happen. It just, there's something that's holding it from happening immediately.
And we also have to remember that, like, time in game and time out of game, I mean, they're wibbly wobbly. So it doesn't necessarily mean that just because we've spent 6 months, without seeing each other means that 6 months has passed. We can make that up. It's not necessary for our game to function that time is like flowing at the same rate. We already have 1 million portals opening up, it's fine.
Yeah.
I will say that for Hanu, I've already written on this. This is included in some of the stories that I've been incrementally sharing. My character and Amy Wilson's character both encountered a kind of disease that was raging through their part of the populace. It wasn't the same as this, but it was some sort of systemic disease. That's just in my stories and hers.
Sure. And I will say, Ben, to your stories, I know that you were writing them as part of the prompts for the exercise workouts.
Mm-hmm.
But by all means, feel free to continue that. If you want to write stories about your character, what things that they're doing. Matt was doing that and has been writing the story of his hunt and his adventures. By all means, feel free to do that and share them with the group guys. We will add those to the website so that it's all recorded and kept with everybody else's.
Awesome.
And
man, I wish I had the brain power to do that kind of writing on that regular of a basis.
Honestly, that I didn't think that I did, but that Hero's Journey challenge was a neat challenge in its own way because it gave you a situation and how do you respond to it. And I've never been a writer or what I would consider to be a writer, but
I'm kind of tempted to try and do something like that for Dr. Morio, because lately I've been feeling like when I originally designed her, I based her off a previous character who was always meant to be this sort of enigma, this sort of just cryptid that would just pop up and help once in a while. But lately I've been feeling like Dr. Morio needs to be more of a proper character, and so I'm thinking that might be a good way to show people her perspective without having to necessarily have her directly tell them, because having her directly tell people things is surprisingly difficult by nature. I do still want her to be the kind of mysterious mute, but I do want her to have some actual stuff going on rather than just letting her backstory and such be this kind of noodle incident like the previous carnation of her was.
I can totally identify with that. Hanu was supposed to be a vagabond, and I'm finding more and more that in order to help him fit in with this, I'm developing him in ways that I never intended. Like I was talking with Jeffrey about having him be a kind of I don't want to say martial arts instructor because that has an Asian tint, but a kind of a fight instructor at times, equivalent of a Oriental medicine practitioner, learn some healing from Amend and possibly from your doctor and put his own spin on it. and still be capable of being
learning healing. If I'm going to start writing from her, something you could actually help with tremendously is helping me learn some medical type things, because I don't actually know jack about medical stuff. I don't know. You're probably in a better position to at least point me in the right way towards learning enough to start writing about it. I don't know.
Let me think on that.
Now's probably not a good time to get super in depth with that.
That's fine.
We've still got a full-on meeting and people are waiting on us.
Right. But I would say for anybody, like, you know, if you want an idea to get you going, then just message somebody else and be like, hey, present me a short situation for me to react to in character, and let that be a jumping off point.
Yeah, Pinterest has a bunch of really cool like story prompt ideas. I use them a lot for some of the text role plays I handle. And as for some of your medical things, not to discredit what Ben does, but there is a thing called Google, and it has helped me tremendously when I'm writing on any subject. It's crazy the amount of information on Google that you can learn.
No.
Yep, don't reinvent the wheel.
Question.
Yes, Caleb.
How do we go about introducing our characters?
So a lot of that is up to you, in essence, of why is your character there. For some people, it's easy to come in with, I have one goal in mind that I'm trying to get started with, and so that's what I'm going after, and these people are just the people that happen to be there. And then you find a reason for your character to be involved. When it comes to the stories that we're talking about, you don't have to involve with these other characters, or if you want to message somebody, be like, hey, I like your character. Can we do something? Can we write something briefly to kind of start off and work with each other on that regard? Angela?
So if you know your character, you know what's going on, like, this is an example, so I'm not trying to push onto your character what it isn't on your character, but if you wanted to play a military character, you could come up in the group and say, hey, I'm going to start this character. He's going to be from the military. Who would I know? Who could I possibly have a relationship with? And we can all go, hey, my character Arya is an alchemist and part of the quartermaster's crew for the military. Simon, down, 2 frames down from me, he's, the temporary leave, but captain of the guard. So, like, there's people, if you want to be, especially if you want to be a native character, there's definitely people that you could talk to have relationships existing. Or you can just, if you aren't a native character, you can have your complete backstory, and you showed up in Estrel that day.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on, neither does your character, it's fine.
You can ask as many questions as you want.
Right?
Okay.
Do you wait till like you're in person in an event to do that, or do you like start on the page?
You can start on the page, you can message us directly. Most of us will send us a friend request first, because otherwise Messenger gets weird about it.
Yeah.
Most of us are happy to talk in Messenger. If you want, there's a Discord if we need to do voice.
Personally, though, like a lot of us, especially me included, I'm always introduced a character the first time I played them. Walking up and either going, hey, I'm new in town, or hey, I know that guy, or acting like a complete weirdo and just like knowing that it's going to get me in trouble because I know how the game system works. So like there's nothing wrong with just going like, just showing up to something. If you can't find the words to introduce yourself or
I got them.
Okay. But as a thing for anybody who might be listening, if the important thing is to start, and however you start is good. Awesome. So if you got writer's block, just show up. If you're like, oh man, I really want to do this, but I don't want to do this until I set this up, then write it down and send it to somebody. Just as long as you're starting, that's the more important thing.
Something else to keep in mind, and like no matter how this is for any sort of role playing I've ever done, in MMO games, in text RP, in D&D, in LARP, you will never find every aspect of your character when you first start.
Right.
Never. They will always be like, at some point, be like, hey, I got this problem. And you'll be like, where did that come from? I don't know, I just felt like telling you about it. Like, my first LARP character with this particular group, she's not a pacifist, but she isn't like, she's not a murder hobo. She's more of a, that's your problem, not mine. But at one point, someone that she had come to call friend, which was not which is a big thing for her, did something that she considered betrayal, and I found her anger, which anybody who knows Reneth knows that's not something that comes quickly to her. So you will always find underlying stuff. If you don't know what you want to do, just come, start doing the thing, you'll find it. You'll find what your character wants.
And a lot of times characters...
Even if you do have a clear picture of what you want your character to be like, don't be afraid of watching them change over time either. It is acceptable and even expected that characters will evolve over time to better fit what the player wants to do and also what the group seems to expect out of them. My first character started out as this mercenary type, but ended up evolving into a more political influencer type over time. So yeah, don't be afraid of letting your character change from what you originally envisioned over time as well.
Yeah, you as a person were not the same 5 years ago as you are now, probably. So your character will change too.
Yeah.
People change. It's just a thing. You're influenced by whatever's around you. And okay, you had something that you were going to say. I interrupted. I'm sorry.
No, y'all are great. I've also found that like my first character was very much me because that's what I knew until I had gotten into situations where I was comfortable playing something outside of what I knew. And so that happens too, where sometimes it's a big change for your character, but then sometimes it's just you being able to take yourself out of it and put on that other character's, brain power and go, okay, what would they do? And then also sometimes we play games that will allow you to think about your character in different situations that they might not be familiar, they may not have come up with. So we've played Never Have I Ever in character before, or we had poke people with the character development stick where we just put them in, we'll have situations and then go, what do you do? And it really, sometimes it makes you stop and think and go, I know what I would do as Kay, but like, what would Hildy do? And that's going to be very different than what Ariana would do or what, other characters. So it's okay to start with yourself and then evolve out from there.
Completely second the characters change over time. I haven't even played live in the game, and yet Hanu is different than I originally envisioned him. Kieran is slightly different, though. Kieran is a version of a character that I've played in several other games, so he's also changed in different games. But I second everything that's being said, honestly.
Yeah, and once you play a character for a little while, it's not out of the question to then say, you know what, I want to try something completely different and start a second character. That's perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. We always encourage that you try to put that same character development into every character that you bring to the table.
While we're on the topic of having multiple characters, you might go ahead and mention what our various rules around that are as well, because I don't know if those are entirely clear to everyone.
Let's table that for now, and we can take a look at it.
That's okay.
The short one is you can't have more than 2 characters in an event.
Yeah.
That's the shortest, easiest one. So, yeah, not more. You cannot play more than 2 people per event.
You can have more than 2 characters generally, but you have to pick 2 of them at each event you go to.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you can. How many more you can have, but the quickest, easiest rule is you can't play more than 2 at an event. So just bear that in mind when you're creating characters.
I have two. I'm super excited for my like non-combative NPC like character that I've created. I'm very excited.
Cool.
We've discussed where they might fit.
Awesome.
On that entire subject that we just covered, there's an interesting thing, and there's people here that can definitely attest to it. So one of the biggest things that I like to encourage people is have personality traits, not quirks. Of when you do something, when you have a repeated habit or something like that, thinking about why or what has influenced a person to have that habit is kind of necessary to give them like character, like character legs, or making them able to feel like a person. But sometimes, you just do stuff and then you go like, oh yeah, that's a thing that they do. And then you figure it out later and then you go, oh, that's weird and kind of gross. And sometimes you find as you do games more and more throughout the years, you might occasionally come across characters like, it's hard being that person. Because like I did this as a thing, like I made them this type of person. And then I found out later why they're that type of person. And it's kind of honestly upsetting to be in that headspace. So my example would be Preacher for a Death Cult, who's a super pacifist, and like being in that headspace more and more and exploring the depths of why they view the world the way they view it. It's like, ooh, you start to seem like a sociopath after you play that person for many, many hours or days at a time. It's like, that's interesting. That's fun. There's also some people that don't embody their characters like that. So like, it might not affect you, but sometimes it does affect people. Yeah.
One of my favorite things that happens with the character is when I, as the player, will start unconsciously doing something for some reason. And then somebody else will ask me about it, interpreting it as a character tick, and then I have to think on the spot, why would the character do that when I myself hadn't even quite realized I was doing it the whole time? So like with my first vampire character, one of the fangs was fitted incorrectly and was a little bit loose. And so what I would do is periodically, if it started feeling like it was going to fall out, I would just kind of push it back into place with my tongue. And didn't even realize I was doing it until one day somebody asked, why do you lick your fangs all the time? I was like, wait, I do? And I don't remember what I came up with, but I had to come up with something on the spot to explain that. Because I obviously couldn't say, well, I'm worried the fang will fall out.
I was gonna ask, like, if for some of our newer players, if they had any questions, or like if they needed any help now, or if they've gotten the help they need.
Just 1 second. I wanted to add a thing that some people here will get.
Okay.
Alex, why'd you draw weapons on that guy? He drew weapons on me. He was prepared to die. Right to meet his death. Therefore, I don't care if he was unconscious on the ground. He was prepared to die, and I gave him that. God, Felix.
Well, and side note to that, like, we talk a lot about, character development and what happens. But think about what your character does in their downtime. Like, that's something that happens a lot. So what do you do when there's not a fight? What do you do when there's not an NPC coming in and, inciting that action from the players? So what are you going to do to create some PvP, in your world, instead of it just being
PvE?
We like to have some things that are that the GMs, put in place. But then it's also fun to fight amongst yourselves and have, that conflict. Yeah.
But to Kay's question, do you guys have any character stuff that you want to ask or talk about, or?
No clue. I don't know what I don't know.
Was fair.
Good answer.
World building things either?
What was that?
World building things as well. Is that may have any world building questions, especially from the new player?
Wait, okay, I do have a question.
Yeah.
On like your day events and stuff, you talk about like, oh, what's the term? Where people are crafting or like making stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So we have 3 different crafting skills that are in our game. One is a artisan, which does more like repairing armor or weapons, things around the military or the actual combat stuff.
Yes.
Then you have the artificer, artificing skills, which is making more magic devices type things.
Yes.
And then you have the alchemist, which is more about potions, healing potions, poisons, those kinds of things. And so all 3 of those are different crafting things that exist in the game and can allow you to create products to sell in the game or to use yourself.
Okay.
Small question related to alchemy.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a separate skill for something like creating alcohol.
Dude, you can't make white Russians.
But
That's what you said. So
Is there any precedent at all, actually, for having alcohol be an in-game mechanical item as opposed to just a role-playing thing? Now that I think about it.
There is an intoxication, a status effect.
yeah, there's a status effect for that. But I mean, creating mundane stuff. Like I once had Arya just make a headache remedy. I made a little bit of Tylenol, and I didn't need the recipe for it. Just it doesn't really have an in-game thing, so.
Okay.
Probably.
And like Dr. Mario has her knockout ability that she's upgraded with the little syringe of stuff, but I don't have to actually craft anything for that, mechanically speaking. It's just an extension of something she already knows how to do. And so it's just the quote-unquote crafting part is kind of role-played there a little bit, but mechanically speaking, there's no crafting going on there.
That's not.
the reason for my question is Hanu starts out as Hanu has alchemy as one of his skills. He has it because he learned traditional alchemy, but he wasn't a very good student. What he was good at was making alcohol.
Okay.
And then he learned other things off of that.
So in story-wise, that gives a great reason for learning the skill. And so what you can do is you can have items or containers or however you want to do it that is the alcohol that doesn't necessarily have any in-game effect. So you as a player could sell alcohol to players and
out of game it would just be like
actual
juice or drink mix or whatever. Mechanically speaking,
Kind
Jeff
of.
is right. It wouldn't necessarily have any mechanical impact.
We don't need to worry about what the substance is, Stomach.
Yeah, you
Like the
definitely
two
do need to
things
be aware of
that-
people's allergies and stuff.
Right. The two things that I've had him make in stories are alcohol and dit da jiao. And dit da jiao is basically a muscle ointment. I even have books that have recipes for dit da jiao, and 90% of it is alcohol. And then some other things like menthol or whatnot in it. Those are the things that he knows how to make, and then other stuff he may pick up over time or learn what ingredients he could use here because he's used to what ingredients he would look for in his own world.
Right. So with your alchemy, if you had the healing recipe, which is a generic recipe, that recipe could be a ointment or could be a balm or something like that, and that's how that character makes the item.
Gotcha.
And so you can flavor that however you want. It doesn't have to be a health potion that you drink.
Cool.
Dr. Mario might have to start
So-
making little syringes into healing potions.
Cool.
real quick on that subject, if we wanted to, we could. Like, actually, there is a thing that all could wrap into that. There are different poisons and stuff like that that apply status effect. So a poison that applies the status effect intoxication would be technically just booze.
Yeah.
There's also a thing. There's also levels to the intoxication thing, or that like really get you messed up, like one of like hallucinogens and whatnot. But it would be conceivable if we wanted to have that as a tradable, craftable, sellable item for flavor and
We could. I don't know that that's something we need to talk about right this instant, but you're right. We could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I'm just letting you guys know, like, that if there's interest in doing that, maybe at the end of the year when we're reviewing and putting stuff and adding stuff to the rules, bring it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanted to make something to be a part of like the trades in like crafting and all that kind of stuff. And so they aren't finished, but I started making these little like pouches.
Yeah.
And I have like antlers. My brother's cutting antlers to make for like the buttons for him. I'm gonna make the strap still, but I'm like, is that some cool kind of thing to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can certainly sell those in game if you want to.
Awesome, because I'm like they can be held on belts and stuff, or I could put straps on them. So I was just like, is this a cool thing to do?
I think most of us start with something where we go, I don't know what I need to make or what I can do, but I know how to do this.
I can crochet.
Right. Does this contribute? And what's
Yeah.
really cool is somebody can sew, somebody can crochet, somebody can make weapons, somebody knows leather working, and eventually you can have a little bit of everybody's stuff because, you share.
I wonder if it wouldn't be worth consolidating into all of those into making beginner kits where it's basically everything you need to get started made by various people all just consolidated into one place, and there it is for you.
That seems like a large dip into people's resources that they may not have.
Like, I'm not saying we should give these away. I mean, obviously they would need to be paid for, as any artwork should be paid for realistically.
I think it's safer to let players buy what they want to buy for their characters.
Or even barter. Like, you may have something that you don't use anymore, and somebody else goes, I really like that thing, so let's trade.
The soul of the crafting community.
I guess a question. Do we have an idea of what US dollar would be the equivalent of in Astral coin? Or if we were to, say, create a product and sell it in-game, whether it be for, U.S. currency or Astral currency, is there a table for that? Or do we have a decision where it's like, oh, it's this much, but...
If you want to sell it for real money, you sell it for what you want to sell it for.
Yeah.
There's equivalent.
There's a problem converting a medieval or pre-industrial currency in the sense that the value of a dollar in a modern sense is what services or goods can I buy, whereas most people in that type of society is like, well, I'm either buying food or things that aren't local here, or I just don't typically have currency because I'm a sustenance farmer or something like that. It's there. The thought of value, like you can transpose value, like how much is a British pound and 1500s equivalent to in the buying power of today, but there is something fundamentally lost in translation when you're converting currencies from different from pre-industrial to post-industrial.
So I think part of the source of Matt's question, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, was just how do we navigate selling actual products to players. And I think a good way that might go with it is if you just have a card or something on you that just says, this is what I'm selling it for in game, but it also has this out of game cost or something like that. And just something that you can show them so that they know. And then you can always arrange payment afterwards or beforehand. They can reach you personally.
I would like to pitch this to to everybody. How about we do out of game transactions with out of game currency out of game?
Yes, I'm not saying to do it during game.
Yeah.
I'm just
So,
saying,
like,
if the question comes up, you can show them.
I'm not super comfortable with the thought of selling any in-game items for any out-of-game currency. Like, if you're selling a prop, then you're selling a prop. But you're not selling somebody armor points or a crafted item or something like that for out-of-game things at all. I think that might be...
I guess I had assumed that, since Mr. Matt there is an enormous crafter, as we can see him crafting right now, that I assumed that he was talking about, potentially selling
a shield
physical items. Like, I made this pair of shoes and I want to sell it for, in-game currency because I'm a cool guy.
Yep.
Instead of having to pay for it, he wanted to have like an equivalent. If I wanted to sell it for, simple number $10 out of game, what would I sell it for in game? And I think you're right. I don't think that translates.
I think at that point, what most MMOs will do is you go ahead and start selling stuff for what you feel the appropriate value to you is. And at some point, once there's a critical mass of people selling individual items or stuff like that in that type of market space, there will be a demand and supply and market value for those types of things. It's really weird and extremely complicated, but it happens. Like, how much fun bucks do you be willing to pay for this? I'm willing to sell it for this. Yeah, okay, and then just
the auction house.
Yep. Any other character stuff or questions on how things work? Caleb, I know you kind of started down this road. Do you feel satisfied with what you're hearing about it?
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
I have something to bring up if we're ready to move to something new.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so originally in the past, Angela and I had talked about making sashes for the 3-colored bands and things like that to wear for like non-combatants and hey, don't sneak up on me and things like that. This sash, I don't think is going to be as feasible in the long run due to like test runs. It falls apart easier or tears up or doesn't stay in the best shape. So I wanted to run an idea by you using the same colors, got same colors. Oh, there it is. Okay, wristbands or lanyards or both. Something that says, hey, you could, wear this around your wrist and be like, hey, non-combatant, this, that, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
So we had that's what we had in LARPcraft. The reason we went with sashes or belts was because it's a lot more visible.
Right.
Tight. If I'm standing here and I'm talking like this, I'm talking with my hand at something in front of me, and I've got a pink band on, no one can see that if they're behind me. So that's why we went with the sash and the belt, is because that goes around the whole body. It's very visible. And so maybe we need to look at what material you're using instead of moving it to a wrist.
Yeah, I went with affordable.
That's fair.
So what I'm hearing here is capes.
That might be a bit excessive. I don't see why you couldn't make a sash out of the paracord, though.
It's a lot of paracord.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I mean, if you're doing like the super thick bracelet style, but if you're doing just like a standard 3-strand braid, it might not be as bad. And if it's a bright enough color, it should still be plenty visible.
Okay, so a 3-strand braid is, even in paracord, is only going to be, maybe a half an inch. It's not going to be it's not going to be very visible from a long range. It'll have to be, inch and a half.
Something more blatant.
Those are there to be out of game visible markers.
Right.
And if they're thin, if they're on something that is easily obscured, even accidentally,
The big thing
they are serving a purpose.
The big thing to think about that is like what's really common clothing wise in LARPs, big baggy clothes. So if the thing that you're wearing can be hidden under the fold or crease of one of your undergarments. So if I put that on and my fold of cloak just wraps around it because it's like super thin, then you're not going to see it. Same thing like if it's on your wrist and you're wearing long sleeves and your sleeve just happens to go over it. So yeah, it has to be a decent amount of width to be able to lay down fabric and just kind of stay visible and not covered up. I'd say probably a second.
So, Matt, on this topic, I would say shoot us a message, and maybe some of the DMs can chat with you at some point. We can try to see if there's something, because we might also have some material that might work, or we might be able to obtain some material. So, shoot us a message. We'll meet up and we'll see what we can do to figure this out.
I don't know how it is on affordability, but you might be able to get like a karate sash, not a sash, belt.
The belt.
Buy belts and dye them.
Oh,
that's a good idea.
Does fluorescent dye exist?
Yes.
Yeah.
Get white ones, and that might work actually, because those are.
How much are the belts?
Around $10 each, maybe less.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, that's not so bad.
And depending, I might be able to talk my Sifu into using a school discount to buy a bunch of them, or if if the LARP group in general has some sort of
slush fund.
Well, if we have a
these aren't that pretty though. Are they going to be pretty?
Of course you will, Caleb.
If we have like a
corsage.
Don't distract me. If we have a Stellar's certificate, something like that.
We have business licenses.
Thank you. Yes. If you have a business license, then for instance, you may be able to go through companies like Tiger Claw, and they may be able to give you a discount based on the business license. I believe I was able to do that on a temporary basis when I was running my own school. It's been so long ago, I can't quite remember.
Okay.
But if we're able to do that, then that gets you discounted prices on the belts themselves, and you can buy them in bulk. So you'll get
the other potential thing we could do in the same vein of that is just getting cotton webbing or cotton belting and just making belts. If you have a heavy enough sewing machine, that's really easy to do. If not, you can hand stitch those things in also a fairly short amount of time, because you're just stitching the two ends around and then dyeing those. But yeah, buying a big length, 20, 30 yards of cotton belting and just dyeing that the appropriate colors and making the belts and just making D-ring belts would be the potential other option. But that would be a crafting day almost of
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
We'll keep that in mind. We can talk about it at a GM meeting and see what we think would work there.
Yeah.
We'll if we need you, we'll get with you, Ben.
Okay.
Figure that out.
Appreciate the idea, because that may solve the problem.
I know they're sturdy.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
These are thick.
Yeah, they are. They can be. But You don't necessarily need to buy the largest ones, just large enough to go around the shoulder. And they are sized for the individual, you know, so like potentially you could get I think you could get a children's belt and it would still go across the shoulders for the terms that you're looking for. Because a gi belt is designed to wrap around you twice. All that we're necessarily looking at is wrapping over once and having something to secure it.
Yeah.
That's not as bad. It's easier.
Word.
I love it when my obscure skills in other things can potentially help out.
Any other character things? Questions? Want to know about any aspect of the world?
Could I share the mask again?
Go for it. Kanan, you have something?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me just fine?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I know that we were talking about what the not production points, but they're the loyalty points that you get for doing
Civil service.
like attending. Yeah, civil service points and stuff. Are they going to become like a regular portion of the game that is going to be required to be able to like remove skills and reset up skills and everything?
So the civil service system is designed to be a part of our game as like a mechanic of our game. It's designed to kind of help us in some of the areas that we want to be able to reward players for doing things. So like volunteer time and stuff like that. We want to give you guys points and give you something back for doing it. And we also have found a solution with upgrading abilities and stuff like that. It's all tied into that same system. So instead of learning like 15 different ways of doing things, we're trying to simplify it into one set of rules, if that makes sense.
To put this another way, you don't have to engage with it, but a lot of the mid and long game content is going to be kind of integral integrally connected to the civil service thing. So when you're thinking about doing your second or third character and you want them to have a really cool backstory or start off with a bunch of upgrades, or when you've filled out all your ability slots and you want to start making those abilities more powerful, then civil service is probably by that time you will have taken like a couple of extra shifts as an NPC or something like that, and you'll have some banked.
Okay, that sounds good. What about for existing stuff? I know that there was some mention of there being an existing list already for stuff that existing players have already built up, but has there been anything that's come of that anytime soon?
I don't even know. It may exist, but I don't think it's been reviewed yet. So it's still in process.
Okay.
Are we okay with saying like the civil service, like the starter list is basically the launch list for civil service points? That is pretty much done. I think, unless there's something else that we can discuss on it.
The actual mechanic stuff, yes, but I don't think we have like individual points for players lined out completely yet.
Was that not just shared to us?
Maybe to the GMs, but as I just said, it may exist, but it hasn't been reviewed yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought the last meeting we reviewed that. I'm wolf.
I don't think so. Maybe not at the completed list. I think we went over kind of what we wanted.
Okay. Sorry. I thought that's sorry. My bad.
I'm not ready to say here. Yes, let's show this to the players yet.
In essence, though, just so, because Katie, I know you're interested, and so other people are probably interested too. We're basing the first points that we assign based on participation. How many events do people join? How involved have you been? So we're going to assign some points to players that have been here previously for that, and how many events that they've been a part of. And then going forward, once it's implemented, all of the ways to gain points are listed on the website that everybody can participate in.
Okay. That was what I was wanting to know, is if there was like a list of players. Yeah, I got it.
Yes, you would fall into that list of players that will have some points when we start. But what the exact number is, we're still working out the details.
Okay. Okie dokie.
Matt, you've changed.
I mean, there needs to be more Remy, like, in our lives.
Right? Guys, she's getting big. She's like over 2.5 feet tall. Yeah.
And talkative,
Yeah.
apparently.
He's telling us.
Yeah. She's so wicked smart. Oh my gosh.
She's cute. She's adorable.
Not a character thing, but there is a mildly urgent thing I would like to discuss with the GM privately at some point today.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it's vague, but
Mildly urgent is an interesting oxymoron.
it's a little urgent as opposed to the house is on fire level of urgent.
Is it something that we can do through chat, or does it need to be video, or?
I don't guess that matters a whole lot.
Okay. Then after, how about this, if the other GMs are good with this, after we're done with this meeting, shoot us all a message on Messenger, and we let us know what's going on, and we can talk to you about it.
Okay.
I'm going to share this mask. I was talking about it earlier. I got this in to be basically Kieran in his bog golem form, and I freaking love the thing. I was surprised that it actually would fit my face because I've got a big noggin.
Come closer to the camera.
Okay.
I love it.
I really, really like it. I've got to make some small modifications because it doesn't have a top strap, so it kind of rides low on the head. I might try to put in, if it's not going to blind me, I might try to put in a sort of a red LED around the eyes.
It'll blind you.
Yeah, that's kind of my fear.
Speaking from experience of having, LEDs around my head.
Really?
It'll blind you at night. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to put my head way back
like
here.
Ryan? When
And
Ryan was the plague guy?
that Ryan's worn.
I've worn multiple masks that have light up eyes, and I've had to fight. Oof, there's some chatter in the background. Somebody. I have fought many boss fights, climactic boss fights to entire events, completely blind and unaware of who I was hitting or how I was hitting. Just like, all right, if I strike in this range, I know I'm going to hit people in the torso and the legs. So let's just swing around and hope for the best. Kill something. There was one Whisper Ridge, I think, where we had this supposed to have been awesome mechanics of lights and stuff, and the backlighting for an event did not go around, and then it was dark outside and raining, so it was completely pitch black, and then I had these green LEDs in my eyes, and I couldn't see anything. So I just had this 8-foot-long spear. I was like, we're going to use this as a boat oar, and I'm going to cast a bunch of AoE spells, and they're going to get somebody. Oh, yeah.
Mine is over 10
It worked.
Yeah.
That was my first event, watching all of that happen. That was crazy to see. But Ben, I still think there might be a way to do it. So if you really want to try, I'd be willing to work with you to see if I can help you figure that out. It's a matter of like covering the light from your eyes, but not obscuring your vision. There might be a way.
It's so cool.
Thank you. I love the thing.
Yeah.
I was seriously scared because I mean, I have a big noggin. And most of the time when I'm looking at buying a mask, I'm like, yeah, it's not going to fit. Hats won't fit. Other things won't fit. So for it to come out and be like, it's practically perfect. The only thing that's going wrong with it is because it doesn't have an upper strap, it starts to ride low, and I find I'm looking like this to see around in it.
My solution with the Plague Doctor mask was to make the side strap at a bit of an angle. It's tilted upwards a little bit, and so that way it kind of sits on the curve of my head a little bit differently, and that prevents it from sliding down a lot. I don't know how applicable that is to yours, but it's another thing to keep in mind as a potential option.
Gotcha.
You may be able to modify it so it's at an angle like that instead of just straight.
I'm going to have my buddy Alicia look at it, and I think you know her from outside of the game too. She does like helmets and masks for like fursuiting and other stuff, and she's going to look at putting a top strap and see if that doesn't solve some of the problem.
I'm terrible with names, so I'd have to probably see something to be quite sure.
Gotcha. So,
but it probably is a reasonable assumption. That's a community that I'm also reasonably involved with, so.
Something that you might consider with the LEDs and everything, this is kind of weird to explain, but this worked for me whenever I was making different silicone decorations, like little mushrooms and stuff. If you're making the LED rig from scratch, and you have the little LED diodes, if you can, and they're like a little dome. If you snip the dome off to where they're flat, it will emit less harsh lighting, and it'll just be more of a glow, and it might be more bearable to deal with. But you just have to make sure that you're not actually snipping the electronic that's in that little plastic casing. You just got to snip the dome portion off.
So if I may add to that, two things. First off, if you're going to go that route, snipping is not a great idea. You're going to be much better off just taking a bit of sandpaper and rubbing at it a bit and just kind of wearing it down that way. That is a much safer way to go about doing that. That said,
I agree with that.
The other product I would suggest is I was at Michael's and found an LED string, and it did not work for what I was trying to do it because I actually needed it to be pretty bright so I could see my keyboard. But it's dim enough that you might be able to get away with something like that. And it's in this big long string that you can just tape down or glue down or whatever to the appropriate spots. So you might consider something like that as well.
Cool.
The other thing to keep in mind is if you're going to do it around your eyes, if there's some sort of design you can have where you have a directional housing, almost making it more like a hooded lantern, like small hooded lantern near your eye, as opposed to letting the glow basically light pollute your entire front of your face. That's what you do.
And that's what I was recommending. There might be a way to design it so that the light isn't shining in your eye, but shining outward. And if you want help with it, let somebody know. We'd be more than happy to help and see if we can help you figure it out. Also, I was going to say, there is an ability in the game called Transform or something like that, or Disguise Self, that you could essentially use to allow Kieran to be able to turn from one to the other.
That's something that I may unlock later on. The character has that in other games as an inherent ability. It's not something that he's able to access, but when he comes back from various lives or is reborn, what can happen is he'll undergo small transformations, and then who's born as maybe sorry to use your name, but Kanan. And he looks like a family member of the previous character, and in essence, he is the previous character.
Yeah.
Now, if he underwent some transformations that are in the kind of quest that I put forth,
Yeah.
then that may be something that he's able to control himself.
I'll add a note too, is a roleplay technique I have used in the past with my abilities is to keep in mind that your character does not necessarily have to be using them willingly. No, like the monk, as a great example, has rage as his racial ability. That is not a thing he just decides to do. It just happens once in a while when he's endangered or stressed enough.
Most of Kieran's, now I'm getting your most of
I mean, like Flint.
Like, just because you, the player, can do it whenever you deem appropriate doesn't necessarily mean that your character has deemed it appropriate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Most of Kieran's abilities are inherent to him and outside of his control. So, like, he has healing, but he can't cause himself to heal. He just naturally heals and doesn't even really know that it's happening to him because he doesn't know he's a golem. So he'll survive something and then have no idea how he survived it, or maybe it was just a flesh wound.
Like, as long as you do the minutes worth of role play in some fashion or another, as long as you're not continuing to do other stuff while you're healing, then I'd say that's totally fine. It might come off to everyone else as he's just going to sit there and stare into space for a little bit without really realizing what's going on. Whatever.
That would be a character trait for me.
I'm just saying, as long as you're not doing other stuff while that minute is going on, however you want to role play that is fine.
Cool.
The main point is that you, the player, are mechanically focused on that. You're not off crafting stuff or running around or whatever.
All right, guys. So we've had a lot of good discussion, talked about a lot of stuff. Is there any last minute things anybody has a question about? We're probably going to wrap up here soon. So if you have any last minute questions you haven't asked yet, please get them out there.
What is the name of the campsite that we're going to in July?
So, Kanan, you missed the first part of the meeting. It looks like we probably are not going to be doing this event in July. There's just a lot of, we all want to do it. But there's just a lot of concerns and a lot of risk involved with it. And nobody wants to see anybody get hurt or deal with anything to do with this virus. So
that's all right. No, that's entirely understandable, though.
I will say, though, for you guys up in the Iberia area, we are very interested in this campground. At least I am, and like I am very interested in holding an event up there at one of their camps. So I will keep pushing to have an event up there. So we will be closer to your guys' area for some of these events. But in the meantime, we just want to make sure everybody's safe.
That's fine. But if you have any ideas for any of the areas or anything, definitely send me the names of the campsites, and I can go out there, take pictures, all that good stuff. I know most everybody in the local area, so.
So we can give you the name of this one, but they are closed for the season because of the virus. So you couldn't go out there right now. Yeah. We were potentially able to get an exception, but we've decided that because there's still too many risks based on what we do to hold the event.
So even if we had been holding it, it would have potentially been the first time that they opened for something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another point against
Well, it was more of an exception. They called it an exception for family groups because it's a family group campsite. So it's generally because you have a group of people that normally lives together. So they were willing to make exceptions for that, but because we aren't really a family group, we have to make our own decision on the safety. So
Gotcha.
Yeah. But Kanan, just for your interest, the campsite we were looking at was Redbud.
Redbud.
It's the smallest of the ones that they offer, but the other campsites are bigger, and hopefully we can expand out into them in the near future. I don't know about you guys, but I would love to see an event where we have 300-400 people all camping at the same campground, all playing in the same game.
That
That'd be
sounds
amazing.
wildly chaotic.
But
chaos is good, damn it.
That would be
I attended
amazing.
and helped run events that big.
So, all right. Any other questions, guys? Anything that you guys want to ask or want to bring up?
I miss you guys.
Miss you
And I
too.
know it's all safety first, but I just miss you guys. I miss the interaction,
I enjoyed hanging out with you, and I'm gonna try to see to it where we can do that again.
Hell yeah.
It was good meeting people. Lots of people first time.
Yeah.
And Caleb and anybody, like, if you're looking for somebody to just like interact with, potentially in character, like, shoot me a message.
Yep.
I'm more than happy to do something like that.
Becca, find me on Facebook. Let's be friends forever.
See, Caleb, I knew you would love joining with these people.
Let's do it.
People.
Who are these people?
Right.
That's true. But guys, so if you want to stay on, I will leave the meeting open. So if you guys just want to chat with each other, by all means, feel free to. I'm going to be jumping off, and I know a few other people are probably going to be jumping off here. But don't hesitate to ask people to meet up in Discord or something. If people want to have a night where you just chat with each other and maybe talk about characters or in-game ghost stories, like ghost stories you think you've heard. Have fun with it. We don't have to be in-game for us to be able to chat with each other and enjoy each other. I know it's not the same, but we'll get through.
Yep.
Okay, maybe someone can stay on and tell me how to upgrade a skill.
Yeah, I'll stick around and I can show you that pretty quick. So.
Oh yeah. Actually, something I entirely forgot about that happened recently. Jeff, you might be able to help me out with that as well. I put that application in to upgrade one of those abilities. I wasn't sure if anything had become of it yet.
We haven't talked about it yet, but I believe we have a GM meeting here tomorrow or coming up here soon that we'll put it on the topic to talk about.
Perfect.
So
thank you very much.
And Kanan, very tangential to gaming, but since we're talking about camping events earlier, I put in an order for the hammock tent, so I can't wait.
Hey.
Thank you for the guidance.
There you go. Not a problem. I always enjoy seeing another bear soft taco hanging around.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you about being such amazing players in our game and being involved with things. I know that I'm not speaking for everybody, but I know that everybody is also just wanting to thank all of your hard work you've been putting into it and the time that you've spent with your characters and helping us develop this world. Thank you so much. And we can't wait until we can start doing these events again. We're all wanting to do them. So
I can't wait either. Want to go club somebody.
all right, guys. I'll talk to you
So-
later.
That kind of puts a really different perspective on your shoes for clubbing, right?
I know, right? Yeah.